Hello everyone and welcome to a new technique video on my YouTube channel. Today what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you a couple of different techniques with embossing and stencils. Now I do have to apologize in advance because whenever I uploaded this video to edit, a little bit of the beginning footage was corrupted and I did have to kinda start where it actually allowed me to start editing. So what you'll see me first doing here is I'm actually spreading out some of the new Spectrum Noir Aqua markers. I've been dying to try these out and I really wanted to have a watercolor background for this card because we're going to be doing again some heavy embossing and I really wanted kind of a dark background to start everything out for us today. So with these markers I did show you before we had a little bit of an issue with the video that there are two different ends on these markers. Right now I am using the end that is the brush tip end, and there is also a fine tip end to the marker as well. So I'm just laying that down on my craft mat here, and I'm just going to spritz it with a little bit of water. Once I'm done spritzing it with that water, I'm going to go ahead and take a piece of cardstock. This cardstock is 6x6, and I'm going to drag through the smooth side of actually this is watercolor paper, that I'm dragging through the I guess the watercolor ink here. It is a watercolor ink that comes out of the pens, and it's a very, very rich color that comes out. So you see I've just dragged it through there until I have the coverage that I want. Then I'm cleaning up the area, and now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to heat it up here a little bit with my heat tool and use my Tim Holtz craft pick to hold it down while I'm doing that. So now we're all dry, and I'm going to go ahead and clean up again because you get a lot of ink from these markers whenever you spritz it with the water. So in the future I'll know that you get a lot for a very little bit of brushing over. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my piece of watercolor paper and I want to apply a stencil to it. Now the stencil that I'm using is again going to be one from Doris. It's an adhesive stencil, but before I do that we're actually going to be embossing over the stencil. So I want to take my EK Success tool here, it's a powder tool, and I just want to make sure that I get the entire area of the watercolor paper just so that we don't have any type of extra sticking to the paper. In this case I don't really mind the extra little bit of embossing powder, that may stick to it, just simply because that's the look really that I'm going for here. This whole entire project came to me because I was doing some research, and saw some really old star maps that were done with this beautiful gold inks and really dark backgrounds, and they were just absolutely stunning. So I wanted to try to recreate that look with this card. So what we're doing now is we're just putting down that stencil on the watercolor paper, and the stencil is adhesive, but since the stencil is the exact same size as the watercolor paper, I wanted to make sure that I taped it down simply because it was rolling up a little bit because it's the exact same size and it was kind of pulling up on the paper. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take again one of Tim Holtz tools here. It is the mini blending tool, and I'm going to use it with the Ranger embossing ink. It's actually called the Emboss It Dauber, and I put some down on my craft mat there, and all I did was use the mini blending tool, and obviously you're going to want to use this tip of the mini blending tool because it is detachable, simply just for this from here on out. So they're very inexpensive. Get yourself a pack of them. I think it's like my craft store, it's like $5.99 for an entire pack of them, and this will then become the one that I use all the time whenever I'm using the embossing Emboss It from Ranger. So I'm just putting this all over the stencil, and again this is kind of the exact same thing as Versamark, but I was able to pour it out onto my mat and actually use it on top of the stencil. So now I'm just going to go ahead and pull up that stencil here, and you'll see kind of in the glare of the light that there is embossing fluid, I guess we'll call it, inside of all of those areas that were on the stencil. And I was very pleased that this worked because I have so many stencils that I would love to use a clear embossing kind of medium as opposed to using like an embossing kind of I guess, an embossing paste. And there you'll see a sneak peek at a new product coming soon from Brutus Monroe, and it is actually the embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. There will be 3 different metallics coming very soon, and this one is actually called Gilded, and it is a very, very metallic gold. That was very important to me when I was picking my embossing powders, is that they were super metallic if I was going to do the metallics, and you'll see here in a second once I start kind of drawing it out how metallic they really become. I'm very excited about them. So I'm just, I patted off that embossing powder. Now I'm just going ahead and heat setting it, and you can see here really how metallic-y that Brutus Monroe embossing powder is. And again, this is the gilded color, which is a gold. So now what I'm going to do is, I wasn't truly satisfied with the background. I know everyone's going to say, I can't believe that you couldn't just leave it the way that it was. But although I did love the watercolor, and I did also love the gilded kind of embossing that is on the back of it, I really wanted to add a little bit of something extra. So it looked like there were some smaller stars that were in the distance. Excuse me, so I took some gesso there. This is from Martha Stewart Crafts, and her gesso is extremely thick, which is great normally for what you would use gesso for, but for my instance, I wanted to kind of do a little splatter in the background, so I needed to really water that down. So what I did was I just spritzed a little bit of water into it, mixed it up, and now I'm just doing a little bit of a kind of a splash onto the project. I just heat set that so that it would dry, and now I'm going to use one of these tags. These tags are from Coordinations. I found them dirt cheap, and they came with the ropes for them. So I kind of had this idea that I really wanted to bring a tag into the mix here. So I'm going to use this tag, and that is the Brutus Monroe ink in the shade of Oz is the name of it. And what I'm going to show you here is a really cool technique with the Brutus Monroe inks. So since it is a chalk ink, it's going to have some granules in it whenever you go from paper to matte here. Whereas opposed to if you would actually go ahead and take it and mix it and then use a brush in watercolor, when you smear it on the mat like this, you're going to see that there are some granules from the actual paint kind of mixture that's in the ink that are going to kind of get caught on the front of that tag. I thought that was really cool, and I really liked that look that we have, kind of the little, I guess, kind of galaxies that are stuck on there. But I wanted to add a little bit of a darker shade. As of right now, there is not a darker shade in the Brutus Monroe ink collection, so I went back to my Spectrum Aqua markers, and I'm going to go ahead and just smear that through. And you'll see here I got a little bit on the card, but I do wipe that off there. It doesn't hurt anything. Again, it's a really fun background, so it's not going to, no one would ever know the mistake except for you and me. So now I'm going to go ahead and dry the tag, and you'll see here that the Spectrum Noir Aqua marker, Spectrum Aqua, is going to actually absorb into those little spots that we have. Now again, I was not satisfied with that background, so what I'm doing is I'm taking the Brutus Monroe Oz ink again, and what you're able to do with the ink is you're able to just go ahead and splot it down and onto, obviously, our background here. And what's nice is, since it is a permanent ink, it is going to hold its own with that background. So once it dries, you can put anything over top of it, and it's not going to smear, it's not going to move. It's a really unique ink. So as you can see there, we got a lot of texture from me just kind of splotting that down there. And now we're going to go ahead, and I'm taking a look here, and I can't really figure out exactly how I'm going to move forward with the card. Because that tag is a little bit smaller than I originally kind of viewed, I want to figure out a way to kind of have it stand out from the background, as well as I want to be able to kind of size it correctly on the card. So I'm just taking the Perfect Medium, which I believe is very similar to the Emboss It from Ranger, and I'm just kind of patting it around the edges of that tag. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to again take the Brutus Monroe Gilded embossing powder, and I'm going to spread that around the tag. and I'm going to now just pat it off there, and again I'm going to heat emboss it. And I really liked this technique again because it reminded me of those old star maps where, you know, they took their time and they really hand painted with metallic inks, and it just looks like it's you know, really old, and it was really carefully constructed whenever it was first put together. And as you can see here, this is very simple. So now I'm going to go ahead and use that perfect medium again from Ranger, and I'm going to stamp out a Brutus Monroe stamp. This is from the Stamp Club, I believe 2 months ago or a month ago, and it is the I Love You to the Moon and Back stamp set. And I'm just going to, again, we're embossing. And can you tell that I got some new embossing powder? I just want to emboss everything. So I'm taking, again, that gilded Brutus Monroe embossing powder, and I'm going to heat set the moon and stars, as well as I am going to go ahead and I'm going to heat set the Love You to the Moon and Back on our actual tag here. Now, both of the stamp blocks that you're seeing that I'm using here are also available from Brutus Monroe. The circular one, which has been the most popular, is what I used for the moon, and then the I Love You to the Moon and Back, which will be stamped here shortly, is the smaller one that was actually chosen for the actual Stamp Club stamp sets because it's the perfect size for the sentiments as well as most of the images. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to stamp that onto our tag here, and again I'm going to pull out the embossing powder. This is the embossing powder that was left over from the first embossing, so it was so simple for me to just dip it into the embossing powder, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to heat set that as well. And now what I'm looking at here is how I'm going to actually put this card together. So what I do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this down to actually a 4x4 square. And the 4x4 square is going to actually be the background then for this tag. And what you're going to see here is the video is going to cut out very quickly because, again, I lost the beginning of the second part of the video. But all I do is I actually cut out a I believe it's a 5.5 by or maybe a 4.5 by 9 card base, and I just attached that background on the front of it. And I really liked the way that that looked because it looked like that was actually painted on the front with a border. So now I'm just going to take that rope that actually came with the tags, and I'm using the Tim Holtz Distress Paint. This is the gold. I don't believe it has another name other than gold. I'm going to take a look here. I believe it's called gold. Probably not, though. Oh, it's actually called Tarnished Brass. Brass. And it is the Distress Paint, and I'm going to go ahead and smush down the paint onto, of course, the rope there, and then I'm going to clean up my work surface, and I'm going to go ahead and dry off this rope so that I'm able to use it to attach to the top of the tag. So we're going to go ahead and dry this off very quickly, and once it's done drying, I'm going to, you'll see I use my pick there again to kind of hold it down so that it does not burn my hands. And I'm just going to lay it out here at the top. It is dry, but it's still a little bit tacky. So now I'm just going to take my favorite new tool from the Dollar Tree, which is their foam adhesive. I'm going to double it up twice on the back of the tag, and then I'll place the tag onto the front of my card here. And I wanted to have that extra kind of a lift to the tag so that I would be able to apply the rope and it wouldn't kind of be stuck or wouldn't look kind of weird. So I attach that onto the front there, and now I'm just going to feed that rope through the hole that was already in the tag, and I'm going to tie it here. I took out a little bit of the footage here because I at first tried to tie a bow and it just did not look right, so I ended up just tying a knot in the card, and now I'm just going to cut off the ends here, and that is our finished card. I hope you enjoyed this video today. If you have any questions, please comment below, and I thank you so much for watching. You have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.